heard a child whisper my name from the dark hallway. Even though I was home alone, it was Christmas Eve, and the house was supposed to be empty. The kind of empty that feels peaceful. The kind where the heater hums softly and the lights glow, warm against the snow outside. I remember standing in the living room, holding a mug of hot chocolate, staring at the Christmas tree. The ornaments were still. The room was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard it again. Hello? It came from the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Soft, careful, like someone didn't want to be heard. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone there. I didn't understand why my chest felt so tight at the time. But that was the moment everything. CHNGED. I was staying at my aunt's house for the holidays. She lived out in a rural part of Minnesota, surrounded by trees and snow-covered fields. My parents had driven back home earlier that day, leaving me alone until the next morning. I was 19, old enough to handle a night by myself, at least. That's what I told myself. The house had 3 bedrooms, all of them down that hallway. I stood there, listening. Nothing, just the faint crackle of the fireplace behind me. I told myself it was the pipes. Old houses make noise, especially in the cold. I took a breath and tried to relax, but my body didn't listen. My hand tightened around the mug. My heart didn't slow down. Then I heard footsteps, slow ones, barely touching the floor. They stopped, just outside the hallway light. I whispered, "Hello?" My voice sounded wrong, too thin, no answer. I waited, seconds stretched out. The silence felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Then something shifted in the darkness. A shadow, moving where no shadow should move. I stepped back without realizing it. That's when I remembered something my aunt had told me earlier that week. "If you hear anything at night," he'd said casually, "don't go looking." House echoes, weird. I didn't know why that memory suddenly felt like a warning. The footsteps started again, closer this time. I backed into the living room. My eyes locked on the hallway. The Christmas lights flickered slightly, and for a split second, the shadow stretched unnaturally long across the floor. Then it stopped right at the edge of the light. I couldn't see a face, just the outline of someone standing there. Too still, too patient. To my phone was on the kitchen counter across the room. I considered running for it, but my legs felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. The shadow shifted again, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. It was small, child-sized. I whispered, "Who's there?" The figure tilted its head. That movement sent a chill through my entire body. Slow, curious, like it was studying me. "I thought you said you'd be alone tonight." A child's voice said softly. I didn't remember dropping the mug, but it shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and loud. The figure flinched. Then it stepped forward. The light revealed the pale face. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She was wearing a red Christmas dress, the kind you see in old family photos. Her hair was dark and messy, her eyes too wide. I didn't recognize her. "Where did you come from?" I asked, my voice shaking. She smiled. "I've always been here." Something felt wrong about the way she said it, like she was repeating something she'd learned. I glanced toward the front door. Still locked. Snow untouched outside. "Sweetheart," I said slowly, "what's your name?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took another step forward. Her feet didn't make a sound on the hardwood floor. That was my second mistake, because when I looked down, I realized she wasn't casting a shadow anymore. "I don't like it when you ignore me," she said. The Christmas lights went out. The room dropped into darkness. I heard movement all around me, soft laughter, more than one voice. And that was when I understood something I should have realized much earlier. I wasn't alone in that house, and whatever had been waiting for Christmas. night had finally found someone to talk to. I heard someone walking on the roof, slow, careful steps. Even though the snow hadn't stopped falling all night, I lay there, staring at the ceiling. My heart thudding hard enough that I was sure they could hear it. The sound came again. One step, then another, heavy, deliberate, not the random sliding noise of snow, not an animal. This was pacing. I told myself not to move. Christmas night had always been quiet in that town. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where every sound feels louder than it should. I was staying at my grandparents' old house that winter, watching it while they visited relatives out of state. I'd done it before. Nothing bad had ever happened. But this night felt different. The footsteps stopped right above my bedroom. I waited for them to fade, for logic to kick in, for my brain to tell me it was nothing. Instead, the ceiling creaked softly, as if someone had shifted their weight. I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't know why that detail scared me so much at the time, but it did. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. No signal, just one weak bar flickering in and out. The house heater hummed, then clicked off, plunging everything into an even deeper silence. Then I heard it, a soft scraping sound, like metal dragging across wood. It was coming from the roof. I whispered, "Hello?" without thinking, immediately hating myself for it. The scraping stopped. For a few seconds, nothing happened. I almost laughed at how stupid I felt. That was when something tapped against my bedroom window. Once, light, testing, my body went cold. The window was on the second floor. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stared at the dark glass, waiting for another sound. Snow clung to the outside of the window, lit faintly by the porch light below. I couldn't see anything clearly, just shifting shadows where the flakes past tapped out this time harder. I slid slowly out of bed, my feet barely touching the floor. The house groaned softly as I moved, like it was warning me to stop. I edged closer to the window, my phone clenched in my hand, thumb hovering over the emergency call screen. Something moved outside, not fast, not sudden, just a shape rising slightly. It's like someone standing up straight after crouching. I couldn't see a face, but I knew someone was there. "I know you're inside," a voice said quietly, muffled by the glass. It wasn't shouting. It didn't sound angry. That somehow made it worse. I stepped back, my heart racing. "You've got the wrong house," I said, even though I knew that wasn't true. The figure leaned closer to the window. A hand pressed against the glass, leaving a faint smear in the frost. Long fingers. Too long. "I was told someone would be here," the voice replied, calm, certain. I didn't understand what that meant yet. Downstairs, something clicked, the sound of a door unlocking. My blood ran cold as I realized the footsteps on the roof had been a distraction, and whoever was outside my window wasn't alone. I woke up to the sound of someone breathing right next to my bed. Not loud, not rushed, slow, careful, like they were trying not to wake me. My eyes snapped open, and for a second, I couldn't move. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of Christmas lights coming from the hallway. My heart started pounding so hard it hurt, but I forced myself to stay still. I told myself I was dreaming. Then the breathing stopped. That sudden silence scared me more than the sound ever could. I was spending Christmas at my childhood home. That year, my parents had gone to stay with relatives 2 towns over, and I'd insisted on staying behind. I wanted a quiet holiday, one peaceful Christmas alone before life got complicated again. The house was old. 2 stories, wood floors that creaked no matter how gently you walked. Every sound carried, which meant someone was in my room, would have heard them enter. I didn't understand why my body felt so heavy, but I knew something was wrong. It's deeply wrong. I slowly shifted my eyes toward the side of the bed. There was nothing there. No shape, no movement, just the empty space beside me. I let out a shaky breath, convincing myself it had been my imagination. Maybe stress, maybe exhaustion. I hadn't slept much the last few nights. Then I noticed something. The bedroom door was open. I always closed it before sleeping. Always. A thin line of warm yellow lights stretched across the floor from the hallway. The Christmas lights on the banister flickered softly, casting long shadows that twisted as the bulbs blinked. I stared at that open doorway, waiting. Nothing moved. That's when I heard a sound from downstairs. A slow, deliberate footstep, not the house settling, not wood popping. A step, then another. Someone was walking through my house. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. My phone was under my pillow. I grabbed it, the screen lighting up my hands. No notifications. No missed calls. The time read 2:17 a.m. I didn't know why that time mattered yet. I slipped out of bed and moved toward the doorway, every muscle tight. The floor creaked softly beneath my feet, and I froze. Listening, the footsteps downstairs stopped, like whoever it was had heard me. I held my breath. Seconds passed. My lungs burned. Then another step, closer this time, at the bottom of the stairs. I whispered, "Hello?" The word barely left my mouth. No answer, but the Christmas lights dimmed slightly, then returned to normal. The house felt colder all of a sudden, like the warmth had been drained out of the air. I backed away from the doorway and locked my bedroom door, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the lock. I pressed my ear against the wood, listening to soft footsteps on the stairs. Slow, unhurried. They reached the top step, then stopped. I could hear breathing again, right outside my door. "This isn't funny," I whispered, even though my voice cracked. No response. Then something brushed against the door. Not a knock, not push. Fingers dragging slowly down the wood. I felt tears sting my eyes. I didn't know who it could be. No one knew I was staying alone. No cars in the driveway. No signs of forced entry. I took a step back just as the handle began to turn, very slowly, testing. I clutched my phone and dialed 911. But before I could hit call, the handle stopped moving. Silence. Then a voice spoke, low and close. "You shouldn't have stayed." My stomach dropped. That voice didn't sound angry. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded disappointed. The handle released. Footsteps moved away from the door, back toward the stairs. I stood there, shaking, unsure what to do. A part of me wanted to run. Another part of me was terrified to open the door. I waited 1 minute, two, to nothing, to nothing. I finally unlocked the door and cracked it open, just enough to look into the hallway. Empty. The Christmas lights glowed softly. The house looked normal again, too. Normal. I walked slowly to the top of the stairs and looked down. The front door was wide open. Cold air poured inside, carrying snowflakes that melted on the floor. But what caught my attention wasn't the door. It was the footprints. Bare footprints leading from the front door up the stairs, stopping right in front of my bedroom. They didn't lead back down. I stared at them, my chest tight, my hands numb. Then I noticed something else, written faintly in the frost. On the inside of the front door were 3 words, "Merry Christmas to you." I didn't stay in that house another night, but every year since. On Christmas Eve, I wake up at exactly 2:17 a.m. and I can still hear someone breathing beside my bed. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.